You always want to look during the season where on draft day, some guys take the theory, I'm not drafting pitchers high, no matter what the stats are in my league, because I can get so many guys, and there's guys that have streaks during the year, so I don't need to spend a first-round pick on John Lester or Justin Verlander. You look at the numbers Verlander's putting up this year, and you look back and you're like, well, wait a minute, that might have been a mistake on draft day. But Scott Baker is an example. Here's my point. Scott Baker on June 1st was 2-4. He's now won 5 of his last 6 decisions. But again, you being an athletic trainer by trade, and the reason we're talking about him today, he's got some elbow issues. The other stat that I saw, which blows me away, I heard the other day, as far as, I forget how you quantify this stat or what they call it, but it's runners on base and how many end up scoring. I think it's just how many guys you allow score. Josh Beckett leads the American League at like 80%. Like he's only allowed less than 20% of runners that have been on base to score this year. Scott Baker is second, which tells you why he's won 5 of his last 6 decisions. So thinking of pitching, thinking of Baker, thinking of the injury, what's his value going forward? And if he's healthy enough, is he an example of a guy you can ride for a 4 or 5 week period?
It's going to be interesting to see what Minnesota does. They're at a really interesting turning point in their season. You know, they're only 5 games back after that disastrous start, but they just can't get healthy. Everyone's banged up there. Joe Mauer's finally starting to show a little bit of life, you know, but Morneau's still out. But now Baker's on the disabled list with a strained flexor tendon in his elbow. I'm a little bit cautious because he does have some red flags in his past that would suggest he's got a history of elbow problems. You know, I really think that this is something we need to keep a close eye on because the flexor bundle originates at the elbow, right at the location of the ulnar collateral ligament, the ligament that's torn and needs Tommy John surgery to repair. A lot of times if you have an injury to this site, you have guys that end up needing that Tommy John. So what happens is you can see on my elbow here, this is where your flexor bundle starts. Let me try to get better. There we go. It starts here and comes down your forearm. And basically what happens is, you know, you have the flexor bundle all right there, right where that ulnar collateral ligament is. And so it pulls and stresses a lot of that area. And so what you have to do is you have to take a close eye on these strains to that area because you don't want to put any undue stress on that area and blow out that ligament. You know, he's scheduled to actually come back. He's eligible to return this weekend. I don't think he'll be back. I think they'll give him a little bit of extra time. Everything Minnesota has said sounds like it's mainly a precautionary reason because he's not quite 100%. They didn't want to put him out there and run the risk of doing something serious like a Tommy John or blowing that ligament out. So, you know, he's going to need probably another week or 2. I think really the next week is going to be critical for him. But if you're in a good position, he may be a guy, if you can get, you know, not have to give up much to get him, he could be a decent, you know, addition and help carry you down the stretch.
And what he, like I said, when you look at those numbers, 5 out of the last 6, he's a guy who's demonstrated that he can be on a streak, and when he's on a good streak, can carry your fantasy team. He can perform like an ace for a month or so.
Yeah, and he's always kind of been like that. I think in the RotoWire breakdown of him, it says that he's something along the lines of, you know, he's shown he's never going to quite be the ace that we hope he would be, but he's very productive. I think he had a 15-win season last year. He's a guy that can get on a hot stretch and really pitch well and help his club. The big thing for Minnesota is, are they going to be able to give him the run support he needs to get wins? You know, I've been a little bit bullish on that Minnesota team all year, but just when you seem to think they're out of it, they've kind of, you know, rallied off and closed that gap to 5 games now, and they could be in for a big second half.
And we move on to Sean Markham, who a lot was expected, was doing well for the Brewers. He's the opposite of Baker in this sense. He's lost 5 of his last 6. He gutted out a win in his last game against Milwaukee, but he's got a neck problem now. How bad is his problem compared to Scott Baker's, for example?
I think the outlook on Markham is much better than Baker. You know, he took an awkward step while fielding a bunt and kind of strained his neck a little bit. He stayed out there, didn't pitch effectively, so they pulled him. It sounds like this was purely a precautionary move, and that he's going to miss his neck or make his next start. Excuse me. I really think he's going to be back out there. You know, you don't want to mess around with the neck when it comes to pitching, especially, you know, if it's on the same side as your throwing arm. Everyone seems to think about core, and they really focus on just the abs and trying to get that ripped 6-pack. But the core extends pretty much everything that's not arms and legs in your head. It's neck, it's back, it's lower back. And so any disruption of that set of muscles, that group of muscles, can really alter pitching mechanics and be devastating for the long term. I think this is something that they were worried about it becoming something worse. Doesn't look like it's going to be. He was a little bit stiff, but I don't think he's going to miss a start. I think he'll go back out there. Hopefully Milwaukee can start helping their big name pitchers out. All 3 of their guys, Gallardo, Greinke, and Markham, you know, they've put up decent numbers, but Milwaukee seems to have not quite brought their bats when those guys are pitching. And, even when those guys aren't pitching well, they just haven't had any kind of production. So it'll be interesting to see. I think Greinke, Gallardo, and even Markham could have big second halves because I think that team's going to make a little move there, especially if they can get Braun back and healthy.